coverage all weekend long. We'll have all the press conferences, all the news, all the views. Luke Jones will be out there sweating. I'll be out there sweating. And, of course, you can follow along on our Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere you are. We're going to be out there at training camp. Meantime, the first place Baltimore Orioles take their show on the road briefly to Minnesota and into Toronto all weekend long. We have not talked, and I thought about this earlier in the week, at all about the potential of this Baltimore-Washington World Series thing. And I know they were talking about that in Chicago in April because both teams were in first place. I mean, we're working on like a good month and a half of this sort of prosperity here. And I haven't given, 2 minutes to the Nationals, so I want to do that. Chase Hughes is here from Comcast Sports Mid-Atlantic. You can follow his journey out of Chase Hughes, CSN on Twitter. He is running around with the Nationals, who are also very quietly up here, at least in first place. And before the bloom's off the rose and the Redskins steal all the thunder down there, Chase, I'm going to let you talk a little natitude, man. How you been? Life's good in first place, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a fun year so far. It's been great covering Dusty Baker in particular, man. Glad to be on with you again.
Well, I mean, covering Dusty, right? So I remember Dave Sheinin wrote a big Dusty piece early in the year at the Post, and I talked to you and all the beat writers, and Johnny Holiday came on and all that. I have not had a lot of first up on Dusty. I've had him on the show a handful of times over the years, but I've never, sort of sat in the dugout when he's doing the toothpick thing that he's kind of famous for doing. We've got that thing going on with Buck up here where we see it in the dugout. Of course, I had my press credential taken away 10 years ago, so I don't see it personally. But there's this sort of old style of baseball and carrying on with reporters that I tell you, Buck and Dusty are wielding the political prowess in both ends of this Beltway thing, aren't they?
Yeah, I think this region obviously has two of the best teams in baseball, but two of the best managers in baseball. I mean, I think if you were to rank them all, you'd probably have both those guys in the top 5 in the league. And I think Buck Showalter, obviously, what he's been able to do with the rosters given to him over the last few years, best record, I believe, in the American League since 2012. And, Dusty Baker has been handed a really good deck of cards for this year, but I think he's done a lot with their bench and their bullpen, gotten more out of those parts of their roster than I think a lot of managers in baseball would have to this point.
And, he wasn't the first choice, right? I mean, there was a lot of drama around him, much like up here in Baltimore. There's been a lot of drama around managers turning down Angelos, general managers turning down Angelos. That for a job, it's obviously a Major League Baseball manager's job, but it wasn't coveted by everyone there, and it wasn't seen as a very easy situation where the bar was set very high last year on Matt Williams, and he kind of collapsed underneath of that. This has been last year what you would have wanted to have seen, the sort of quietness and the professionalism and the lead, and it appears nobody's coming to get them. This is what we predicted for the Nationals last year.
Yeah, in terms of them, wanting someone else, basically the way it went is they really liked Bud Black at one point in the managerial search last year. And he ended up, I guess, wanting a little bit more money than they wanted to give him. So whether that was the direct reason or not, they ended up turning to Dusty Baker, and I think they ended up getting a better manager. And I think there's a pretty good parallel to draw, actually, from Baltimore. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Ravens really liked Jason Garrett.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
Before they hired John Harbaugh, and I think kind of a similar situation here where they ended up almost lucking into a better option. And that's kind of been a storyline of this season because over the offseason, Daniel Murphy wasn't their first choice for their second baseman. They really went after Ben Zobrist, offered him more money than he took with the Chicago Cubs, and then they really wanted Brandon Phillips of Cincinnati, but Brandon Phillips wouldn't waive his no-trade clause because he wanted more money, and the Nationals balked on that. So they settled on Daniel Murphy kind of like they did with Dusty Baker, and obviously that's worked out really well, too.
How is he not the MVP of the National League?
Well, I think he's the MVP at this point. I mean, not just what he's done this whole year, obviously leading the majors and batting average, and he's already surpassed his career high for homers. He's become a significantly better player than he was previously, and he was already a really good player. But what he's done in their direct head-to-head matchups with the Mets this year is pretty amazing. The Nats are 9-4 against the Mets this year, and I think that has a lot to do with Daniel Murphy. He's hit over 400 against his former team. I think he's got 4 homers in those games, has hits in all 13 of them. So
we've really never seen much like this, right? Like, I mean, Ellsbury moving back and forth, right? And Johnny Damon. But within division, this was a pretty filthy move, right? And he had won all the games for them. Had been their best player in October. Like, he was kind of Mr. Matt. He almost wore the baseball head, right, at one point, right? I mean, to let him get away and to let him get away to a place where they're now getting their butts kicked, I mean, it's really kicked up sort of a Mets-Nats. Like, there's a real rivalry developing there, the way we had talked about the Nats, Orioles, in the corridor and all that stuff. I mean, the Nats had no natural predators when they came into this. Clearly, the Mets have become that at this point.
Oh, no question. And it's become the greatest part of this rivalry in terms of storylines. And they have him really cheap. I mean, he's only making $8 million this year. That's because a lot of the money in his contract is deferred. But even when it goes up to $17, $18 million toward the end of his deal, his 3-year deal, that's still kind of a bargain right now with the way he's been playing. And, I was thinking the other day, it's kind of interesting. I bet, obviously, the Mets would have loved to have Murphy back, considering what they've seen in hindsight. But if Murphy had taken that qualifying offer that they offered him, just imagine the money he could have made this offseason if he went into free agency. Instead, he's under team control for 2 more years for the Nationals in a contract that looks like a pretty good bargain right now.
Yeah, we have the same situation with Wieters here where he took the money, and they didn't expect him to take the money. And, we're going to hear that all off season for decisions that are made, right? I mean, this is the time and this is the week where the people who make the decisions, the owners, the executives, the farm directors that are saying, don't give this kid up, we like this kid, the managers who are involved in all of this. This is where you put your money on the table this week and in those moments where you decide to sign a Murphy or decide that Bud Black's not your guy and Dusty Baker's your guy. And you come to this point in the season, for the Orioles, you see Trumbo. For the Nationals, you see Murphy. But you also see the things that get swept up by the side of the road. I mean, Bryce Harper was supposed to be having this kind of a year, right? And leading himself to the... He's not having a great year. Chris Davis up here, not having a great year. But by and large, the teams are exactly where they want to be. And now it's who's going to get a Chapman, who's going to make a deal, who's going to improve themselves. Where are the Nats in that this week? Because I know they've already been into the market.
Well, they were looking at Aroldis Chapman, and it was an interesting situation given his history with Dusty Baker and given the Nationals have coveted him for so long. But now that he was traded to the Cubs, I'm interested to see if the Nationals weren't simply enamored by him personally, or if they really are intent on upgrading their closer position. When it comes to the trade deadline, the real discussion for the Nationals becomes, which prospects are they willing to part with? Because as good as they are in the major league level, they have a really good farm system with the top pitching prospect in baseball, one of the top position player prospects in baseball, and Trey Turner. They've got some other guys. Reynaldo Lopez just debuted last week and pitched in the Futures game. He's the top 50 prospect. Victor Robles, a young outfielder, 19 years old, who's also a top 30, top 40 prospect. So the Nationals kind of have to decide now, do they want to go all in this year and maybe sacrifice a little bit of their future in terms of their minor league system, or hold on to those guys and continue to kind of retool moving forward like they've been prone to do. They haven't necessarily been unwilling to trade their prospects, but usually it's not the top guys that they part with. And right now they've got a big group of them, but at the same time, potentially a few areas where they could upgrade on their roster. Or if you parted with one of those guys, you could really bring in a true star.
Chase Hughes is with Comcast Sports Mid-Atlantic. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Chase Hughes CSN. He covers the Washington Nationals, a little natitude going on down there, and always has wonderful throwback pictures and images on his Twitter of Senators and Nationals days gone by. Wonderful picture of Jack Kennedy. This had to have been, 62, 63, somewhere in there, opening day, and a Senators catcher or manager. We haven't figured it all out. A lot of wonderful suits and Secret Service in that picture, though, right?
Yeah, I love the fashion in that photo, the 1960s suit.
The sunglasses are really pimp, man. Yeah, they're really cool, no doubt about it. Chase Hughes CSN is where to go find all of that. Does it feel like in the National League, if you're around the Nationals, that the Cubs and the Giants are sort of the boogeyman coming to get you to some degree?
Well, I think with the Cubs, obviously after getting Chapman, they have to be one of the favorites in baseball, and they've handled the Nationals pretty well this season. Swept them in 4 games earlier this year. I think they're 5-2 against the Nats this season, but they haven't faced the Giants. They're about to see them on Thursday, going at San Francisco for 4 games, and then just a week after that, the Giants will come here for 3 games. And I'm really interested to see how the Nationals match up with them because beyond the coincidence that this is an even year and the Giants have won last World Series in each of the last 3 even years, they just have the pedigree that I think should scare Nationals fans and should scare even Cubs fans. If that team gets into the postseason looking as good as they have at times this year, I think they're the last team you want to face on either side. With Bruce Bochy, the best manager of baseball, Buster Posey, Madison Bumgarner, they always seem to have rookies that come up and play well in the playoffs, and they've had a few young guys develop into stars like Brandon Crawford and Joe Panik. That's a really tough team, and I think right now, even though they lost 6 straight coming out of the All-Star break, they would be the favorites for me in baseball, the San Francisco Giants, just because all those guys have been there before. All those guys seem to bring their best on the biggest stage, and of course, it was them who knocked the Nationals out of the playoffs the last time they made it back in 2014.
Chase, for you with the trading deadline, this has been sort of a slow evolving process where it's not all done at 3:59 on the day of the deadline, that these trades have been sort of leaking out from the minute Shield started to get dealt away, and the Marlins have gotten involved as well. And, hey, while we're on it, let's talk about the Marlins. As far as teams sort of coming to get teams, they have been, along with the Astros, I think, over the last 60 days, the teams that are on the come that are going to have to be reckoned with at some point here in August, September. I don't think they're going to go away.
Yeah, the Marlins are an interesting team because before this season and really all season, I thought that maybe their lack of depth would hold them back, but they've gotten some great production from a lot of their players. Of course, Giancarlo Stanton hasn't had the season that we thought he would at this point, and Wei-Yin Chen, who you guys are very familiar with, you can say the same about him.
We could use him, but not for $80 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But we really could use him every 4th day or 5th day.
I thought he would make a big difference for the Marlins this year, and he hasn't. But Ichiro's had a fantastic season. Marcelo Ozuna, Christian Yelich. D. Gordon's been suspended, but in his place, Derek Dietrich has been really good. They already added Fernando Rodney to their bullpen. I think their bullpen's gotten better. Jose Fernandez obviously is very, very good, and I think it'll come down to starting pitching for them. I think they have the talent, and they've had a lot of guys come to have really good seasons, and I like Don Mattingly as a manager. I think they have the talent to be better than the Mets this year. But I think they could use another piece at the trade deadline, probably a starting pitcher. I know they're scouting Jeremy Hellickson of the Phillies. So I think they're still a little bit of ways away from the Nationals. And even when the Nationals have slipped, this past week and in recent weeks, the Marlins haven't really been able to take advantage of that. So I'm wondering if it's not this year, but maybe next year for the Marlins, unless they can do something pretty bold at the trade deadline and really kind of supercharge their efforts of catching the Nationals.
Yeah, kind of weird the Orioles and the Nationals and getting together, right? I mean, it's going to happen very, very late this time around, into late August, and certainly there's going to be incredible relevancy on both sides of those matchups, right?
Yeah, I love those series. Whether you can say there's a true rivalry between the teams is probably pretty debatable, although we have seen some pretty interesting moments in the past. I remember Buck Showalter getting pretty mad at Jason Worth for taking his time in between pitches at Camden Yards. And I know whenever they go up to Camden Yards, the fans love to boo Jason Worth and some of their other players. But it's just a fun series at both parks. You get a good mix of fans at both sides, and there's always a good energy for both teams. So I always look forward to those series every year. And I have to say, I always look forward to going up to Camden Yards too. That's a pretty nice press box to watch a baseball game in.
Well, I haven't been there in 10 years, so you're preaching to the wrong guy at this point. But I do know the angle. I do see it on Twitter from time to time. Chase Hughes joining us here. He is Chase Hughes, CSN, out on Twitter covering all things Nats and a little Natitude. We'll try to stay busy up here and keep pace. And we'll see how the Mets and the Marlins do coming chasing you guys down, and of course the Red Sox and the Blue Jays sort of batting down the hatches. It's a great summer, right? I mean, I know the Redskins and the Ravens are going to have their thing, but for baseball fans, every night there's going to be really good drama here in the corridor over the next 60 days.
No doubt. And, Bryce Harper, if he can turn his season around, that would be pretty exciting. But there's a lot of stars on both teams. Manny Machado, the way Mark Trumbo's been hitting, and the Nationals have had a lot of top prospects come up and do relatively well in Trey Turner and Lucas Giolito and some other guys. So, yeah, it's been a fun summer. We'll see if this continues into the fall and if these teams can take some attention away from the Ravens and Redskins.
Well, I would say this, man. We just got to figure out who's there to pitch every fourth and fifth day around here. If we can figure that out by August 22nd, we've done something, I think.
Hey, but Buck makes it work, doesn't he?
Sometimes it's like with, paper clips like MacGyver, right? Hey, man, great having you on, Chase. Enjoy some Natitude down there. And, I might sneak down there for one of those Giants games. That would be kind of fun, about 2.5 weeks from now. So we'll see how that goes. First place to first place always gets my attention, man.
Yeah, Madison Bumgarner versus Steven Strasburg is one of the pitching matchups, so maybe you can come down and see that one, man.
Yeah, that'd be worth $10. I'll throw my name in the hat for that. See who will host me that evening down at Nats Park. Great having you on, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Anytime.
We'll keep watching. Chase Hughes, CSN out on Twitter and at Comcast Sports Mid-Atlantic. He covers the Nationals out there, and you can follow their journey. And, it's baseball. It's summertime. We got training camp going on. Luke and I will be out in Owings Mills for all things Purple all week, all weekend. Any breaking news will happen first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, our morning newspaper. It's your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. And anything you miss, it all lives in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault on your mobile device and at WNST.net. Big thanks to them. Just download that TuneIn Radio app. We can come in crystal clear and live from wherever you are on the TuneIn Radio. It's all brought to you by BuyAToyota.com. I can be reached nasty at WNST.net anytime. LinkedIn, Facebook Live as well. Twitter, our WNSTV channel on YouTube, as well as Snapchat and Instagram. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.